The third and last suite of the album is called The New Kings, and its first section is called F Everyone and Run. Now, according to Hogarth himself, the title itself isn't exactly out of any anger towards anyone or anything, or isn't in any attempt at shock value, but rather it's more of a expression of sadness and kind of tragedy in a way. It's basically a reflection of the every man for himself kind of mentality that a lot of people can be prone to. Basically, basically abandoning any and all people that you, even those close to you, at the first sign of some kind of fear and panic, and pretty much giving in to those fears and kind of leaving behind those people and just caring only for ourselves and for our own safeties. Too afraid to take risks or face our fears and all that. It so it is in a way kind of example of using such a swear word in such a very calm but still very sorrowful feel, especially when he actually sings it in the song itself, in that high falsetto and that tear jerkful music. It feels more sad than angry. With that in mind, the New Kings seem to be a reflection of politicians and celebrities kind of sitting on their riches and wealth, them sailing on gold and diamonds, and they would be willing to compromise their own ethics in order to keep themselves on top and to maintain their power. And from the very heights of their ivory towers, they kind of ignore the problems of those lesser than them. They don't see the slums on the streets and kind of homeless people who don't have as much fortune as they do. And there's also a bit of a foreshadowing to the very cancel culture and the identity politics that kind of plague a lot of stuff today. How they do what they please, yet we do what they're told. Almost to say, as long as we keep silent and our mouths shut about certain things, we will still manage to keep our positions and our platforms. So there's not really one bad guy in all this, even when it kind of talks about these new kings and queens. But even then, they say they're too big to fall. After all, as the old saying goes, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. These themes continue in the next section, Russia's Locked Doors. In this, the New Kings announce that they have the keys to the locked doors of Russia, obviously, obviously referencing how the communism of Russia has failed in the long run. They've embraced capitalism nowadays, and they've pretty much in some way become a super nation on par with China and America, and they have what with their strong military and whatnot, and these locked doors of theirs may contain some nuclear weaponry or just riches that some people want to gain just to increase their own wealth. Again, playing into the fears of war and the greed that manifests in people who would often use war as just another way to gain more of that wealth. There's even a bit of a reference to the '87 film Wall Street, when the motto of Michael Douglas's character, "Greed is good," is being sung here. And there's also a point where you even hear the sounds of like shaking coins along to the beat of the song halfway through the piece, when Hogarth mentions the oceans of money. And now, it's not to say making profits in itself is automatically bad. We all gotta make a little bit of money, getting paid in our jobs to keep ourselves and the companies we own or work for afloat, and to keep our lives stable and all that. But still, there still has to be a matter of ethics, and there comes a point where the ethics become breached by the demand for more than enough money. especially when it comes at the cost and lives of artistic integrity and the lives of people, such as the diggers of diamonds that we wear, which is mentioned in the song itself. So it's very clear with its political themes of greed and power, but it's not trying to point the finger. Still not trying to point the finger at any one individual, but making more of an obvious allegory to kind of paint the picture of an almost dystopian future. This world of fears being exploited by people in power who would rather see people be kind of set aside if they're deemed irrelevant to them. In part 3, A Scary Sky, Hogarth cleverly references the Beatles song A Day in a Life when he says he saw the crash on the news today. Oh boy. But also kind of referencing the economic recession of 2008, cleverly kind of bringing in a relevant twist to such an old shout out. Then he proceeds to question this, asking if it really happened or not. Clearly, he needs to ask Randy Marsh in his Margaritaville. But I digress. To the sounds of marching drums, Hogarth continues on asking us what's going on now anymore, and proceeding and kind of expressing himself how he doesn't know what to believe or not on the news anymore. Expressing the fear of how often news stations kind of sensationalize what's going on with the world lately, kind of dramatizing it, taking sides, kind of either playing into our fears or just trying to be blissfully ignorant to us, telling us that everything's fine and dandy when they may not be, or they try encourage us to worry too much, like a storm in a teacup. And he kind of goes on to say how they can do anything with computers these days, obviously referencing the rise of technology and social media that has been growing in the past decade or so, especially how Marillion themselves have made careers lately out of crowdfunding their own albums, and as well as their marketing. For what the scare, it also kind of it also in a reference to the Lever song. It also says flying high in the scary sky, kind of connecting to that, and how the Levers could kind of fly over the skies and the aeroplanes. They'd experience a bit of turbulence, fearing that it might crash down and burn, whether it be it literally or metaphorically, since we live in a very heavy political climate in these past few years, and sometimes taking a side isn't always as easy as it may seem, or we kind of a bit hesitant on deciding what is a truth or a fact or a lie or something else entirely. It's something worth thinking about, and it's something that I think many of us are indeed afraid to even just consider to think about. Then things get quite a bit heavy on the music side, at least, on the fourth and last part of the New Kings, Why Is Nothing Ever True? In this guitar-centric climax, we're told to remember a time when we thought we mattered or belonged to something great, how that we believed our countries would care for us, the people, and in turn we would die for it under any circumstances, especially in the world wars and any conflicts that dare threaten our country and our values. And almost painting and picturing a nostalgic, idealized vision of what things may have been before being shown otherwise by reality itself. How the world is much more complicated than we may wish it to be. And plus, how we could wish to sing our national anthems without feeling any shame or exploitation but from those of higher powers. But in the bitter end, we're just living for the new king. Note how Steve Hogarth sings the new king in plural as opposed to the plural of new kings, as if implying that the new kings have been competing with each other and themselves, and in the end, one new king stands among the rest. It's not exactly made clear in that kind of respect, but it's still an interesting idea to kind of interpretate. But it also ends with another decent guitar solo by Rothery before going out on a close. This is a very very bitter, almost bleak ending to this suite, and it kind of shows that no one else really wins. We all kind of fail in our own trials against such harsh climates, be it politically, economically, socially, or even literally, like with all the disasters and deaths that happen across the world. Even with this ongoing pandemic, which may or may not been foreshadowed in something like this, what with the fears and all, but it's still something worth feeling and thinking about. How in the end, we don't always win. Sometimes a triumph isn't always possible. And so the Fear album ends with the short song Tomorrow's New Country. Clocking about 1 minute and 47 seconds, this song is mostly the expected piano and a bit of a faint guitar, and it's mostly a bit of a reprise of the Lever Suite, but reusing the lines of "There are scars in her eyes and from 1,000 goodbyes," but it also kind of diverts a bit about how the Levers had them admit that they're better left off alone, and they're being called off to this tomorrow's new country, for the day at least. And it seems to kind of have a bit of a bittersweet ending to the album overall, having a bit of a simple callback to one of their previous songs, while also building a bit of sense of hope in it. This new country of tomorrow seems to me the possible idea of a genuine utopia that could one day be built out of the darkness that kind of plagues societies today, and kind of counting on us to create that future, working together between Leavers, Remainers, and all else to come together to create this new bright future. It's kind of a good ending to this album overall, and Hogarth really does well in kind of expressing that through his vocals alone. There is no trickery here. It feels openly honest, and I love it for that. And as a whole, the Fear album by Marillion is a good addition to the discography of the band. It's somewhat different from the more classic 80s albums, like with Anorak, but it's still clearly a neo-prog album, and if you think Marillion have just gone off differently after Fish left, you clearly haven't listened to an album like this. So, on the whole, I highly recommend it. It has some really good themes. It actually handles its themes of politics very well, and it does well at avoiding getting bogged down in being all one-sided or making it all black and white. It's very ambiguous with its politics and its morality. No one's entirely innocent, but no one's entirely guilty either. We all have a part in our cultures, in our societies, in what happens to us as much as what we do and what we say. And it does paint a very believable reflection of the world today. And I dare even say it's still kind of relevant, considering what's been going on lately in the past 5 years since the album released. So, yeah, it's both bleak, but it's still also hopeful. It's both very engaging to the mind, but it's also got some very good music in it. It's got some great guitars. It's got some good use of some of the orchestral strings, and Hogarth does fantastically on the vocals as ever. So, in the end, I highly recommend it to both old school Marillion fans and newcomers wanting to check out the band in the various evolving sound that they've managed to catch on to over the past 30 something years. And I still look forward to where Marillion go from there. Yeah. But for now, next time though, October begins, which means Halloween. And things are going to be a little bit spooky as we take a look at, as we go somewhere in time with an Iron Maiden album. Back in this old place again? Well, I guess it's better than being chased by a bunch of crazy drunkards. Hello? Anyone? Anorak calling to Major Tom. Anyone out there? Ah. Oh, there you are. Thank you. About time the reception worked. Yes? Yes, I'm still alive, thankfully. I'm just somehow transported back to this old place. Where was it? Oh, I don't know. I was in some forest in the middle of Gloucester in some weird frat party for some stag or something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why all it. I don't know. I don't know. We should be glad I can't film a lot of these reviews in advance, because a lot of the fans are going to wonder what the hell's going on with me. Okay. Alright. I guess I'm going to have to wait here again. Alright. Okay. Over and out. Well, at least I'll keep coming here. Oh, the people who won't mind me staying out. And plus, it's a good thing I'm in a place that does have another toilet.